Imagine this. You're sitting alone in the middle of the night. The world is quiet. No distractions. No notifications. Just you and the aching truth you try to avoid. That gnawing emptiness you can't quite name. It's not physical pain. It's deeper. It lives under your skin, behind your thoughts. It's the heaviness of being, the invisible weight pressing on your chest, even when everything seems fine. And for a split second, you ask yourself, what is this thing I carry? Why does life, no matter how good it gets, always seem to carry with it a quiet thread of suffering? You're not the first to wonder this. Thousands of years ago, a sheltered prince named Siddhartha Gautama stepped outside the palace walls and encountered, for the first time, an old man, a sick man, and a corpse. In that moment, the illusion shattered. He saw what most of us work tirelessly to ignore, that life is stitched together with suffering, aging, sickness, death, loss, disappointment. He walked away from luxury, power, and family to chase a single question: can this suffering be ended? And in a different century, far from India, a man named Friedrich Nietzsche stared into a similar abyss, but his conclusion was not comfort, not peace, not release. It was confrontation. To live is to suffer, he wrote. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. One saw suffering as the fire to be extinguished, the other as the forge that could shape a higher self. Two men, two minds, one mystery. What do we do with suffering? Here lies the philosophical duel of centuries. Buddha taught that desire is the root of suffering, that peace lies in letting go, in extinguishing the self, silencing the ego, reaching nirvana state beyond craving, beyond pain. To stop the wheel from turning, one must abandon the wheel entirely. But Nietzsche looked at this and said, no, that's not a cure. That's a retreat, a denial. He called Buddhism a passive nihilism, a tranquil resignation, a sophisticated anesthetic. He didn't want escape. He wanted transfiguration. He wanted the flame to consume him, to burn away weakness and forge something powerful in its place. So who was right? Is the goal of life to end suffering or to endure it? To silence the self or to strengthen it? Is desire a curse to be cut out or a spark to be refined? And most terrifying of all, what if suffering is not a problem to be solved, but a question that unmakes you the longer you stare into it? Because let's be honest, suffering is not a rare event. It is not something that happens to you once or twice and then passes. It is stitched into the structure of being itself. You suffer when you're rejected. You suffer when you're loved too much and fear its loss. You suffer when you're broke, when you're wealthy, when you're unknown, when you're envied. You suffer from your memories. You suffer from your hopes. So how do you carry that? Can you really let it all go like the Buddha says? Or must you dive deeper into it, as Nietzsche urges, until it bends to your will or breaks you completely? This is not a question of religion, nor just of philosophy. It's a question that lives in your body, your breath, your sleepless nights, every moment of despair, every illusion shattered, every hope betrayed. Buddha offers you freedom from the storm. Nietzsche offers you the eye of it. But can either path truly make you whole? Can you actually kill desire without killing yourself? Can you actually conquer suffering without becoming a monster or a ghost? There is no escaping this question, because whatever you choose to believe about life, whatever ideology, religion, productivity hack, or therapeutic practice you follow, underneath it all is the raw truth. You will suffer. And so the real question becomes, will your suffering be something that destroys you, or something that reveals who you truly are? Why does suffering exist at all? What does it want from us? And why do we keep trying to run from it, when maybe, just maybe, it is the very thing trying to wake us up? You will suffer. And so the real question becomes, Will your suffering be something that destroys you, or something that reveals who you truly are? But to answer that, we have to go deeper beneath philosophy, beneath words, into the hidden machinery of the human mind. Why do we fear suffering so much that we numb ourselves with endless distractions? Why do we chase things that always leave us empty? And what dark truth about the human condition were both Buddha and Nietzsche trying to confront each in their own radical way? Because here's the twist. What if the way we've been taught to see suffering as a mistake, a flaw, an error to be fixed, is itself the illusion that's keeping us trapped? In the next section, we'll peel back the layers of this illusion. We'll enter the unconscious, explore the wounds we inherited from birth, and expose the quiet war raging inside your psyche between the part of you that wants peace and the part that wants power. Keep watching, because once you see what's really driving your pain, you can never go back to who you were before. There's a strange thing that happens when you're alone for too long with your thoughts. At first, it's quiet. Then it gets loud. The noise isn't outside. It's coming from deep within a chaotic swirl of regrets, fears, longings, and unfinished stories. A part of you wants to silence it. Another part listens. And if you listen long enough, something horrifying becomes clear. You don't know who you are. You know what you've been told to be. You know how to perform for others, how to chase praise, how to avoid shame. But beneath all the masks, all the roles, there is something raw, something broken. And this is where suffering truly begins. Buddha said that life is suffering because of tanha craving, that we cling to things we cannot keep: youth, love, approval, permanence. The more we cling, the more we suffer. And so, to be free, we must let go, detach, renounce, still the ego. But Nietzsche looked at that very same problem and scoffed. For him, the desire wasn't the problem, it was the pathway. Will, hunger, drive, these weren't obstacles to overcome, but expressions of the will to power the raw force of life itself. To deny that was to castrate the soul. Yet both men were circling the same wound. The human condition is marked by a deep psychic conflict. We are creatures of instinct, thrown into a world of expectations. We're told to be kind, but we burn with rage. We're told to be grateful, but we crave more. We're told to be whole, but feel broken beyond repair. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the unconscious parts of ourselves we disown, repress, exile. But the more we shove these dark impulses underground, the more they fester. And this inner war between the ideal self and the hidden self creates a constant, low-grade torment. We don't suffer because life is cruel. We suffer because we are divided against ourselves. And here's the great tragedy. Most people will spend their entire lives running from the one thing that could set them free. Because suffering, when faced honestly, reveals something sacred, not in a sentimental way, but in a brutal, holy, soul-splitting way. Buddha tried to guide us toward release. Nietzsche tried to forge us into warriors. But before you can choose either path, you must stand naked in the mirror of your own pain and stop pretending you know who you are. In the next section, we'll uncover what happens when this hidden war continues unchecked. Not just in you, but in the entire world around you. Because your suffering doesn't stay in your mind, it leaks into your choices, your relationships, your culture. And the consequences are far more devastating than you've been led to believe. But before you can choose either path, before you renounce desire or embrace the chaos, you must do something far more terrifying. Stand naked in the mirror of your own pain and stop pretending you know who you are. Because your suffering is not just a personal affliction. It's a signal, a ripple, and what you do with it, ignore it, numb it, channel it, doesn't just shape your fate, it shapes the world. In the next section, We're going to pull back the curtain. You'll see how unexamined suffering spills outward, how it builds the very systems we think are keeping us safe, and how our fear of pain is silently reshaping everything. Our relationships, our politics, our culture, our future. This isn't just philosophy. This is personal. Because once you see how suffering metastasizes, how it turns into resentment, control, and delusion, you'll realize this isn't just about Nietzsche or Buddha anymore. It's about you. It's about the life you're unconsciously building every single day. Keep watching, because what comes next will challenge everything you believe about who's really in control. You or your pain. You think your suffering is private. You think it lives in your head. Real suffering just can't be kept inside. It leaks. It seeps into your voice when you're speaking to someone you love. It hides in the passive aggression of your compliments. It sharpens your silence. It dictates the things you dare not ask for and the things you punish others for wanting. And when billions of people are silently doing the same, it builds civilizations that worship distraction. It creates cultures of denial. It turns entire societies into trauma factories. Let's begin at the smallest scale. You're walking around every day with wounds no one can see, a rejection you never processed, a fear of being unloved, a belief that you are somehow not enough. And to protect yourself from ever feeling that pain again, you develop armor. You become the overachiever or the joker, or the controller, or the one who never gets too close. This becomes your identity, not because it's true, but because it's safe. Carl Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So when you sabotage love, when you avoid stillness, when you lash out at your partner for the thing your parent once did to you, you'll believe it's rational, justified, but it's not. It's haunted logic. And now scale it up. Multiply that unconscious pain across families, generations, cultures. You get systems that glorify perfection and punish vulnerability. You get work cultures that reward burnout and call it ambition. You get religions that sell shame disguised as salvation. You get governments that exploit fear to manufacture obedience. Why? Because unresolved suffering is profitable. It keeps people consuming. It keeps them obedient. It keeps them terrified of what would happen if they stopped playing the game. You buy things not because they make you happy, but because you're terrified of being invisible. You post things not to share joy, but to prove you exist. You chase success not because you love the work, but because, somewhere deep down, you think it might finally make you lovable. This isn't life. This is a trauma response wearing a Rolex. Nietzsche saw this coming. In the Genealogy of Morals, he dissected how morality itself was built by the weak to control the strong. How resentment turned suffering into virtue and created a world where strength was labeled evil and weakness was rebranded as goodness. He saw that when we cannot own our pain, we invert it, we weaponize it, we shame the joyful, we mock the free, we punish the powerful, not because we are moral, but because we are envious, because we're still bleeding and don't know how to stop. Now ask yourself this. What kind of person do you become when you don't face your suffering? You become reactive, fragile, easily offended. You become addicted to certainty, to control. You become dangerous, not in a dramatic, villainous way, but in the quiet way that damages people you love, simply because you can't sit with your own pain. You raise children who inherit your anxieties. You teach them not to feel, but to perform. You pass on unspoken rules. Don't cry, don't question, don't rest, don't fail. And just like that, suffering becomes hereditary. Not through genes, but through silence. But here's the twist most people never see. We don't just fear suffering, we're addicted to it. Because suffering gives us identity. It gives us something to blame. It gives us an excuse not to risk, not to love, not to live. It's easier to cling to your story. I'm broken. I was betrayed. I've been hurt too many times, than to face the abyss of letting go. Buddha warned about this. He called it dukkha, a kind of existential friction. But he also knew that many would rather suffer predictably than face the terror of freedom. Because to be free is to be responsible, to no longer blame the world, to meet your pain fully without defense. And that is terrifying. So what does this mean for you? It means that every time you avoid your suffering, you are not escaping it. You are feeding it. You are handing it the keys to your life. It means that every distraction, every performance, every armor you wear isn't protecting you. It's imprisoning you. It means that the culture around you, its obsessions, its politics, its madness is not random. It is a mirror of unhealed human pain, systematized and monetized. And the more unconscious we remain, the more we hand over our lives to systems, ideologies, and leaders who promise relief, but only deepen the wound. This is why the world feels like it's constantly on edge, not because we're doomed, but because we've built everything on the unspoken belief that suffering is a flaw, instead of seeing it for what it really is, a message, a mirror, a portal. But to walk through it, you must stop asking how to end suffering. You must begin asking what it's trying to teach you. In the next section, we'll begin that rebellion. We'll challenge everything you've been told about pain, growth, and identity. We'll explore how to transform suffering, not by running from it or worshiping it, but by finally seeing it as the very crucible of becoming. This is where the real freedom begins. What if everything you were taught about pain was a lie? What if healing doesn't come from fixing yourself, but from destroying the version of you that was built to survive? This is the rebellion. Not against others, not against society, but against the false self you've been living as, to keep yourself safe. Because safety, as you've known it, has a price, and that price is aliveness. Let's be brutally honest. You weren't raised to face suffering. You were trained to perform through it. When you were scared, they told you to be brave. When you cried, they told you to stop. When you failed, they told you to be better. So you adapted. You made yourself smaller or louder or smarter or tougher, whatever kept the pain at bay. But that adaptation wasn't growth. It was survival. And the problem is, you've confused it with you. So here's the first radical truth. The version of you that everyone applauds may be the one that's killing your soul. Buddha said the self is an illusion. Nietzsche said the self is a creation. Maybe they were both right. Maybe the self you need to kill is the one you didn't create, the one society installed in you, brick by brick, wound by wound. So how do you break free? Not through comfort, not through positive affirmations or temporary relief. You break free by choosing the most dangerous thing of all, to suffer consciously. What does that mean? It means sitting with your pain without numbing it, not fixing it, not intellectualizing it, just being with it, letting it tear through your story, your masks, your coping mechanisms, until all that remains is something terrifying and sacred. Truth. It means letting go of the narrative that says I am this way because of what happened to me, and replacing it with, this is what I choose to become because of what happened. That's not denial. That's not repression. That is transformation. You've heard the phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But Nietzsche meant something far deeper than grit or toughness. He meant becoming the kind of person who can take pain and turn it into power. Not the power to dominate others, but the power to transmute darkness into light. To say, this happened, I was broken, I bled, I almost gave up. And now look what I've built from the ashes. That's the Bermensch, the one who creates values, the one who doesn't wait for meaning to be handed down from gods or ideologies, the one who forges it from fire. And the Buddha? He wasn't preaching escapism. He was offering liberation from the need to cling, to grasp, to control, to sit in the storm of your desire and not be owned by it. That is the opposite of weakness. That is mastery. That is the eye of the hurricane. But how do you live this? Here's the rebellion in practice. You stop chasing validation, not because you don't want it, but because cravings hold you back. You stop editing yourself to be palatable. The world doesn't need another copy-paste human. It needs someone willing to be real, even when it's ugly. You feel your feelings without a script. No more, I shouldn't be sad, or this isn't a big deal. If your body is speaking, you listen. You stop trying to fix yourself and start asking, what part of me was never broken to begin with? You use pain as a compass, not to flee from, but to investigate. What am I avoiding? What lie am I living? What truth am I afraid to see? This is how you begin to break the loop. And it won't be pretty. Don't expect Instagram quotes and spiritual light shows. Expect nights of rawness, conversations that rupture. Expect losing people who only loved your mask. Expect grief for the years you spent asleep, but also expect something else. Something no one tells you about when you begin this path. A quiet, irreversible freedom. The freedom of not needing to explain yourself. The freedom of choosing love over fear, even when it costs you. Feeling free because you finally stopped ignoring your pain. This is what the mystics meant when they spoke of awakening. Not bliss, not escape, but presence, integrity, a bone-deep alignment between what you feel and how you live. This is not the easy path, but it is the true one. The Buddha left his kingdom. Nietzsche lost his sanity. And yet, they both pointed toward the same frontier, the moment when a human being stops running from themselves and starts becoming. In the final section, we will arrive there. We'll walk into the fire and ask the ultimate question. What if suffering isn't the enemy, but the doorway? What if all along it wasn't trying to destroy you, but to return you to something you've forgotten, something ancient, something holy? Something that was always yours. Keep watching. The final revelation changes everything. Imagine this. Everything you thought made you, you, the titles, the dreams, the identities, has burned away. You stand at the edge of yourself, stripped of illusion. There's no script left to follow. Just silence. And the pain you've been outrunning your whole life. But instead of destroying you, that pain does something else. It opens. And through that opening, you glimpse something you've never truly seen before. Not a flaw, not a punishment, but a passage. Here's the truth most people never dare to consider. Suffering isn't the enemy. It's the invitation. It's not asking to be eliminated. It's asking to be understood. You were never meant to avoid pain. You were meant to listen to it. Because pain is the one thing in your life that never lies. It strips away the noise, the ego, the performance. And what remains, if you're brave enough to look, is the real you. This is the place both Buddha and Nietzsche were leading to, from opposite directions. Buddha taught the release of attachment, not as escape, but as clarity. Freedom comes when you stop grasping at identity, status, pleasure. When you realize that who you truly are is not the craving self, but the witness behind it. Nietzsche took the opposite road. Rather than dissolve the self, create it anew. Let suffering forge you. Say yes to it. Become the kind of being who transforms pain into power, chaos into meaning. And yet, they weren't at odds. They were describing two facets of the same truth. Suffering is the crucible of awakening. When you finally stop resisting pain, you discover that it was never here to punish you. It was here to reveal you. Not the version of you shaped by fear, success, or survival, but the part that existed before the world told you who to be. The soul, the silent witness, the force behind your eyes that has never changed. You see, all along, suffering wasn't the shadow, it was the lantern. This isn't spiritual poetry. It's existential reality. Because once you stop numbing, posturing, escaping, you reclaim the one thing most people lose forever: presence, not as a technique, not as a performance, but as a state of being that cannot be faked. This is where the loop ends. When you stop asking how to fix yourself and start asking what your pain has been trying to teach you all along. And what it teaches is freedom. Not the freedom of comfort or control, but the freedom of no longer needing to be anything other than what you are. When you allow suffering to do its work, not to harden you, but to purify you, you stop building your life around avoidance. You stop searching for meaning in mirrors, and you begin to live from truth instead of fear. Because nothing can be taken from the person who no longer clings, and nothing can control the one who's no longer running. So what now? You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to wait until you're healed. You simply need to stop lying to yourself. Sit in the silence, feel what's there, and listen. The pain isn't trying to break you. It's trying to bring you home. Final lines. You were never broken. You were only armored. And the suffering was the key that cracked it open. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Rumi, now you know. And once you see truth, you cannot unsee it. So now the question is yours to answer. Do you believe suffering is something to be healed, or something to be embraced? Can pain truly be transcended, or is it the very thing that shapes who you were meant to become? Let me know in the comments, because this isn't just a conversation between Buddha and Nietzsche. It's a conversation between all of us, and the lives we're still becoming. If this video made you think differently, even for a moment, please give it a like. Share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more journeys into the heart of philosophy, psychology, and selfhood. Truth is a fire, and it's time we stopped running from it.